This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I'm going to talk about schools of thought are very useful to divide people and also why we should not focus in people but in principles and values and uniting and organizing. Ideas and perspectives are important to discuss, and we cannot and should not silence them. That's not even the most disgusting ideas should be discussed and debated, because if we do not do it, they might grow in silence as a malignant tumor that metastasis. Oh my gosh, metastasis, as a metastasis spreading all over the social body, society, and taking over the system, and that's how it works. So it's like the rule that the prohibited fruit is the most desired. So it's not by prohibiting, not by illegalizing something that makes it go away. It can work, sometimes it works, but not always. And even the ones that illegalize an ideology or a political party or demonizes a school of thought or whatever, they might later use them if there are political purposes, if they serve their political purposes or economic purposes. So the point is, how about plebeian politics? How about the politics that and the culture that serves not the many but the collective, that serves the well-being of the whole society? And when we talk about the whole society, we need to understand that this is the whole society, because many times we use these words like this benefits the whole society, but we are just referring, those who use this kind of terminology, they use it in a way to sound nice, to sound appeasing, but they are not referring to you and me. When they talk about the whole society, they talk about those that matters, not us, not the majority of us. Because for them, the majority of us, which means the working class, the poor, the destitute, the middle class also, are tools, are useful idiots. Not only to do the work that needs to be done, but to perform tasks like surveillance, like policing, like doing the beating for them, that making the system work for them. So, the schools of thought, many schools of thought, emerge as a critic. We have critical Marxism, for example, or you have postmodernism, or there are so many. And that is very useful to divide people, to divide the Marxists against Trotskyists, and it's also about people, you know. It's also about the idolization of people, of individuals, of groups, of religions, or whatever. So, this idolization is the wrong. It is not. It's not useful for a true culture of liberation, liberation from oppression, liberation from coercion, liberation from deception, manipulation, which means instrumentalization of our lives, that we need to understand. And those who pretend to be part of a liberation process, they need to step away from the ivory towers, the academic ivory towers, the cultural ivory towers, the artistic ivory towers, which means those who belong to an elite that is not necessarily an economic or political elite, but is the elite that has the time and the resources and the knowledge to produce new critiques, new analysis, new perspectives, usually against other ones, not with, most of the time with academic hubris, not with the idea to liberate anything, but to build a career, to build a name in the market of ideas, you know, to become eventually, to build a reputation, is these people are not friends of the people, okay? They are part of the problem in the sense that it doesn't mean that there are no important ideas to be debated and discussed, and as I said, it is important to let all voices be heard. That's not the point. The point is when these schools of thought, these ideologies, these narratives serve to divide people. You know, they do not unite people; they divide people. Because what is important is not to discuss people. I mean, it is important to know some historical facts. We need to know, but we need more than to blame people, because all of us have sins in our lives. All of us all of us have done mistakes, have committed. I mean, we are not free of sin. That's the point. Which means that if we start always looking for what someone has done wrong, we always find something to create division. Because when we only try to use the flaws and the mistakes and the crimes eventually just to focus in the person, instead of discussing and debating the ideas and looking into what kind of system, okay, we should build as a society, as an economy, as a culture, it has to be based on universal principles and values that we need to understand, that we need a global civilization. We don't need globalism, or what people call globalism, or we don't need a global government, but we need a global civilization. What do I mean with that? We need a civilization that where all peoples of the world come to understand that we have shared values and principles that need to be that are structural for the well-being of the people, for a social, for what I call it's not I don't invent it, but I use it, a social and ecological political economy, for an ecological, holistic, civilizational paradigm. And that needs to be global, that needs to be internationalist, that needs to have the values based on values and principles that we all can consider universal, that we all share, not only as human beings, but also as living beings, as part of the community of the web of nature. Okay? So this is, in my opinion, what matters. And if it's about schools of thought, okay, then we lose ourselves in the minutiae. We lose ourselves in the weak points, which means that we are always looking for a weak point to have a criticism, to be able to criticize. And so many of us just are focused in our self-importance, in this feeling of righteousness, that my idea is better than yours, It's kind of, and then there is there are better ideas, and that's exactly the point. We should be focused on discussing and debating the ideas, not the people. Not trying to destroy the character. Not attacking people. This is exactly the kind of culture, the kind of framing that serves power, that serves the oligarchy. And this is one of the reasons why the left, whatever that means these days, is like it's like, I mean, it is the source of its own destruction, of its own irrelevance. And then nothing matters, because everything is relative. Truth doesn't exist, and just confusion, division, and stupidity. In the name of what? Who gains? Who are the ones that really profit out of this this academic war, does these wars, this for the preeminence, for to being to having a place in the pulpit, to be recognized, even to become wealthy and whatever, and finding a place in history. Is it what matters? You know? I mean, what matters, it's not the great philosophers and scientists and the thinkers and mathematicians and this and that, because in the end, the people, among the anonymous people, among the many, among the demos, there are voices, there are people that would get to know the same or similar ideas that those we idolize and follow, which is exactly the point for me as well. Followerism is wrong, idolizing is wrong. People deserve to be admired and respected, but that's it. As we do, all of us should and must be respected, and admiration, I don't even know if it's necessary, but of course respect, I think, also can include certain recognition and the intellectual, the ability that some of us, the skills, the intellectual skills, the intelligence, the artistic skills, the mathematical skills, whatever kinds of skills do we have as individuals, they are important, but they are only important if the consequences of them or the results of them is to the implementation of the well-being of the demos within the boundaries, the ecological boundaries. Not just to consume more, not just to transform us into consumers, into a society where everything is commodified and everybody is looking, self-interest and profit and accumulation of wealth and private property seems to be the values, the principles by which we should guide our lives. We do guide our lives. Because if we don't want to become destitute and deprived of most things that society can provide, we need to follow the rules, the laws of this that form the structure of this society. And then what we do is to fight each other, to not being able to be to debate and to find a common platform. No? No. Because of what? Because of the individualistic pursuit. This egoistic form of existing that we look even subconsciously for a place in the pattern. I mean, we just, So do we, especially the people on the left, that, in my opinion, which should define the left, one of the principles that should define the left is not individualism versus collectivism. It is the inequality. It is the principle that the right values defend, that is the punishment of those that are not able to thrive within the existing conditions, which are the many. Okay? The right wing has the principle that private property, okay, the ownership of private property, the proprietary rights, the accumulation of wealth are more what represents the dignity of life, not life itself, but the material. These people that supposedly, many of them, are religious and believe in God and are traditionalists, but at the same time they believe, what they truly believe is in the sanctity of the material possessions, okay, and the symbol of wealth, which is money, which is part of a virtual reality, is a cultural reality, is an idea, but nevertheless it's a representation of wealth, and therefore they love it, and they do not care to be unjust, unfair, to treat life in any form of life, human life and other forms of life, as property, as objects to be exploited and to be repressed and even to be obliterated. So the left, what should divide the left is exactly the opposite. Is the principle that by defending the collective well-being, we also are defending the individual rights, the individual dignity. What we need to do is not to follow schools of thought that divide us in so many. It's to understand that the values in principles that really define the left, that really define humanity, and then we can identify and we can easily see that most of the right-wing values and principles are a deviation. They are not humanitarian. They do not represent humanity. They do not represent the sociability of humanity, the social condition of the human nature. And this is where we should focus ourselves. Those of us that do understand that by leftism, I'm not talking about any particular school of thought, not Marxism, not Trotskyism, not post-structuralism, not this, not any theory in particular, or school of thought, or ideology. Okay? Because if we do it, we are playing, and this, you are exactly playing by the rules that serve the other side of the political spectrum, that exactly they understand much better that how to weaponize the failures, the mistakes, the flaws of the left in their favor. The point is, we do, all of us, and again, I don't want to deprive, I would not deprive anyone of a voice. So, the thing is, for us, the demos, okay, and this is a very important point for the most of us that are manipulated through by the narratives and by the propaganda and everything else that is part of the web of deceit. We need to understand why the right-wing ideologies they do not have the interest of the demos on their, is not part of their agenda. You know, what we need is to demonstrate why these ideologies and these political parties and organizations and think tanks and whatever, they do not defend the good, the collective well-being. That's not part of their agenda. It doesn't mean that they do not defend rights or values that are important for people. That's not the point. The point is what kind of economic system and the culture wars. The culture wars can be political and social and can involve behaviors and all the rest that we think is morally wrong or right. But what we need to understand is what kind of political economy, who really benefits with the system these people want. So they benefit from the existing structure, which means the capitalist structure, the capitalist order, all institutions, national and international, and the ideological infrastructure as well, which means the ideological and cultural and social structure that defines the role of class and caste and hierarchy, and that is part of our identity, which means it's part of how we perceive ourselves, how we establish relations with each other and with nature, with the environment, so how we perceive the world. And that is also that benefits the right side of the political spectrum, not the left side, not the radical left, because the radical left is counter-intuitive. It goes the values and principles of equality, of justice and truth are not because the right wing it doesn't want truth, but truth is always relational. Justice is always relational. So what I mean by that is that they benefit because they can exploit, they can use the existing paradigm to defend their value system that is much more, that appeals to the common sense, that appeals to the existing structure, the existing ideologies, the existing culture and social reality, which means that we all, to a certain extent, pursue self-interest and profit and wealth accumulation and private property. And therefore, the radical left wing, the values that they call collectivist, which is not necessarily collectivist, because collectivism is one thing, because we have societies that are collectivist, like the Eastern, Eastern philosophies and civilizations. They are collectivist. They are not necessarily. They do not protect the individual rights, and the left, a radical left vision, political vision, is exactly the point. The point is the collective well-being is essential for the protection of the individual rights, for a culture of liberation, of true liberation, for a life with dignity and meaning, and as much freedom as possible. We call it left, we could call it whatever. Whatever. The point is just a point of reference. I just use radical left as a reference. We could. I just don't want to focus in any particular school of thought, because I know this is not the way to get anywhere. This is just useful to create divisions and to have this point. Especially, I'm better than you, kind of, so what I defend, how I see it, my perspective, my perception is better than yours. So And then this is a culture and ideological identity that you don't have any other choice. But if you want, you have to be part of this group. This tribalization, this is a tribalization. This doesn't allow people to discuss what matters, which is the fundamental values and principles. The universal is not to discuss people. We have just to take what is important from Marxism or from whoever it is, and instead of focusing the contradictions, in the inconsistencies, in what is wrong or right, we need to focus in the principles that can be useful for a universal, to establish a universal civilization that has nothing to do with globalisms or control or hegemony or anything of that sort. But we need it. We won't solve any problem at this point in history with nationalism, but not also with populism, right-wing populism or left-wing populism. We need a conscious transformative process that doesn't, it's not about going out in the streets and demonstrate and whatever. I'm not saying that's not important, but we need more, to be more organized and united than that, and that at the international level. If we do it only in a very divided and fragmented way, we cannot achieve any substantial change. We are just always condemned to reforms that in the end just bring back the same people into power and control. And this is a historic fact, and it really, and then that's why the left is responsible, because if it's basically to generate divisions, and therefore we are screwed. That's it. We all know that no one owns the truth. But sometimes, or too often, we behave and believe otherwise. So we need to pay attention to it and change, because this is not this is so. If we pursue this in this way, we for sure can at the individual level be successful. We can have a successful career, or it can be a successful writer or philosopher or scientist, politician, or whatever. But we won't do any good for a deep, comprehensive societal change, and that, in my perspective, that's what we need. because by insisting in the same, keeping the same structure, that's what we have been doing, even the societies like the USSR or China or other countries that have implemented socialist or communist systems, there are still structural features that did not break away with the imperialistic civilizational paradigm. And because capitalism, there is the main force driving the problems we have, but the ideological and cultural and social structure that have been framing how we perceive the world, how we perceive ourselves, how we relate to each other and the world and the living, the nature, the other living organisms, has been affected and instrumentalized by that frame of work, by that structure that I call civilizational, imperialistic civilizational paradigm, which is still the platform for the whole world, that affects how we think, how we feel about reality, how we think and feel about reality, and how we perceive ourselves and everything else. Capitalism didn't invent class and caste hierarchical systems. Capitalism didn't invent inequality. Capitalism was the result of it, was benefited of that already existing structure. So it doesn't matter if you have an aristocracy or an oligarchy or a plutocracy. What matters is the structure. What kind of social, cultural, socio-cultural structure, and of course political system and economic and political economy, because all these aspects, all these features have work as a system. No, they just reinforce each other in order to enhance the power and control of the elites over the rest of us. And this works at the national level and at the global level. And this is why, if we have a system, economic system that is globalized, globalization is not dead. What is dying or going through a process of dismantlement, or at least losing power and influence, is the Western hegemony. Global commerce and trade is not dead. It's not going to die unless there will be a third world war. But for the moment, globalization is still global trade, is the reference, is the system we have in place. So we cannot think that we will become, that we close our borders and everything is fine. No, of course it's not fine. If we close our borders, for most countries, there will be even worse. The problem was not globalization. The problem is not, or was not, the globalization of trade. That's not the problem. I mean, there are problems with it, but it's not the problem. The problem was the globalization of finance, was the ability to use a international monetary system controlled by the West, and especially by the Americans, to enslave people, to control local economies, and to control resources around the world. So it was not trade, it was not commerce. It was a particular form of a monetary and financial and banking system controlled by the West. Okay, today I'm going to finish here. Too many interruptions, and this is not good for my reflection. So I will get back to these subjects, and thanks for listening. I will be back soon.